Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something very simple. Why do we make life so hard? Think about it for a moment. Life in its essence is simple. The sun rises, the seasons change, opportunities come and go, and the basics of living, eating, learning, loving, growing are not complicated. Yet here we are, stressing over decisions, overthinking problems, worrying about things that may never even happen. Somewhere along the way, we've taken a straightforward journey and made it a maze. And the truth is, we don't need more luck, more money, or more time to find ease in life. We need clarity. We need to see the simplicity that has always been there and recognize that most of the weight we carry, most of the struggles we face are self-imposed. When you start to realize that life is easy, not because it always goes your way, but because the rules are simple, something shifts. Suddenly, challenges become lessons, mistakes become guidance, and what once seemed overwhelming becomes manageable. The question isn't how can life be easier? It already is. The question is, are you willing to stop making it so hard? Perception is one of the most powerful forces in life, more powerful than circumstances, more powerful than talent, and more powerful than luck. It shapes how we see the world, how we respond to challenges, and even how we define success. The truth is, life itself is inherently neutral. Events happen, people act, opportunities appear, but it is our perception that colors every experience with meaning. Two people can walk through the same situation and emerge with entirely different lessons, emotions, and outcomes simply because they perceive it differently. When we believe life is hard, we see obstacles in every corner, setbacks in every change, and failures in every attempt. But when we recognize that life is easy, simple, and abundant at its core, those same circumstances transform into opportunities, learning experiences, and stepping stones. This is why so many people struggle unnecessarily. They have created a lens of complexity over a world that is simple at its essence. Consider how often we worry about what might go wrong, anticipate difficulties that may never arise, or hold ourselves back because of fear. Each of these is a product of perception, a story our mind tells us about reality that may or may not be true. The fascinating thing about perception is that it is malleable. We can change it, shift it, and shape it through conscious awareness, practice, and self-reflection. By choosing to see life as easy, by choosing to focus on solutions rather than problems, we begin to experience a sense of flow and alignment that feels effortless. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges or pretending difficulties don't exist. It means approaching them with clarity and simplicity, recognizing what is truly important and letting go of unnecessary complexity. When we adjust our perception, we also adjust our actions. Decisions become clearer, priorities become sharper, and energy that was once wasted on worry and overthinking is redirected toward progress and growth. Life stops feeling like a heavy burden and starts feeling like a series of choices we can navigate with purpose. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice seeing things differently, to reinterpret challenges as lessons, to transform discomfort into insight. And over time, this shift in perception doesn't just change isolated moments, it changes the trajectory of our entire lives. It allows us to move through situations with more confidence, more ease, and more clarity, realizing that the world is not as complicated as we have made it, and the freedom to live fully has always been within reach. Overthinking is one of the silent thieves of happiness and progress, a subtle force that makes life far harder than it needs to be. It convinces us that we need to analyze every option, predict every outcome, and control every variable before taking action. The truth is, most of the time, the very act of overthinking creates the resistance we fear. We get stuck in loops of what ifs and maybes, and the energy we spend imagining obstacles multiplies them in our minds. Life at its core is simple, but our minds have a way of complicating it with endless questioning, hesitation, and doubt. Every great achievement in history has come not from perfection or exhaustive planning, but from action, experimentation, and learning as we go. When we overthink, we delay, we second guess, and we resist the flow of opportunity. It is like standing at the edge of a river, studying every ripple, every potential current, and every stone, while the current moves past us, carrying those who choose to act. Resistance isn't out there, it is within. It grows from indecision, from imagining problems that don't exist yet, and from giving power to fear instead of to possibility. The irony is that clarity often comes through action, not contemplation. The first step forward, the first decision made, the first effort taken, these are the moments that dissolve resistance. Overthinking gives weight to problems and exaggerates challenges, making mountains out of simple steps. The simpler we approach life, the lighter it feels, and the more momentum we create. Every small action reduces the unknown, builds confidence, and transforms uncertainty into learning. Life rewards those who are willing to act despite imperfection, who are willing to start before they feel ready, and who understand that progress comes from movement, not rumination. Overthinking may make us feel prepared, but in reality, it often paralyzes us and steals the very momentum that could carry us to success. By learning to recognize when our minds are creating unnecessary resistance, we can step back, breathe, and choose simplicity. We can remind ourselves that action clarifies more than analysis ever will, and that ease and flow come when we trust ourselves to move forward, adjust, and keep learning along the way. The world is waiting for those who act, for those who see the path and take the first step, knowing that clarity, confidence, and growth are born in the doing, not in the endless thinking. In the pursuit of success, we often chase the extraordinary, the flashy, the shortcuts, believing that life's achievements lie in grand gestures or complicated strategies. Yet the reality is that life responds most profoundly to mastery of the fundamentals. The basics, the simple principles that govern growth, productivity, and happiness, are often overlooked because they seem too ordinary, too easy, or too slow. But it is precisely in these fundamentals that true power lies. Eating well, managing your time, nurturing relationships, showing discipline, thinking clearly, and taking consistent action. These are not glamorous, but they are reliable, and they compound over time to create remarkable results. Many people make life hard because they try to skip steps, they chase complexity, or they look for secret formulas. They believe success is hidden in some mysterious strategy, when in truth it is built on habits that are simple, consistent, and intentional. The fundamentals are like the roots of a tree. If the roots are strong, the tree can weather storms, grow tall, and bear fruit year after year. Neglect them, and no matter how impressive the branches or leaves seem, the tree will eventually wither. Focusing on fundamentals brings clarity because it narrows your attention to what really matters. It allows you to identify distractions, ignore noise, and invest your energy in actions that produce results. It turns overwhelm into order and uncertainty into confidence. When life feels complicated, it is often because we have ignored these basic principles, hoping that complexity will solve simplicity. Yet those who return to the basics often find that the simplest strategies are the most powerful. Discipline in small things builds resilience for big challenges. Patience in learning builds wisdom for decision-making. Consistency and effort builds momentum that lasts far longer than bursts of intensity. The fundamentals are the backbone of achievement, the framework that supports creativity, innovation, and growth. When you commit to them, you create a life that is easy in its design, even if challenges arise. You stop reacting to every problem and start building a structure that carries you forward naturally. The key is not to overcomplicate, not to chase perfection, and not to wait for the perfect moment. It is to understand that simple, repeated actions rooted in fundamental principles compound to create extraordinary outcomes. Mastery of fundamentals does not happen overnight, but it happens consistently, and over time, it turns a life that feels chaotic and hard into one that feels fluid, powerful, and unstoppable. One of the most liberating truths about life is that choice is power. Every moment presents us with decisions, some small, some life-changing, and the way we approach those choices determines the quality of our lives. Yet, many people live as though they have no control, as though life happens to them rather than through them. They blame circumstances, blame other people, or blame luck, when the real power has always been in their hands. Every choice we make, no matter how seemingly insignificant, shapes the trajectory of our lives. Choosing your attitude in the face of difficulty, choosing to act rather than wait, choosing to learn rather than complain. These are the decisions that define your path. The problem is that we often underestimate the cumulative power of these small conscious decisions. We focus on the grand outcomes we cannot control while ignoring the simple choices that are completely within our grasp. Life feels hard not because it is inherently complex, but because we surrender our power to indecision, fear, and habit. When we recognize that we have the ability to choose, everything changes. We realize that even in challenging situations, we can choose our response. We can choose our perspective, and we can choose our next step. This understanding transforms challenges into opportunities, problems into lessons, and setbacks into springboards. The freedom of choice also demands responsibility. We cannot blame others for the consequences of our decisions, and we cannot wait for someone else to create the life we desire. Choice is a gift, but it is also an obligation. The more conscious we become of the power of choice, the more we understand that every action, every thought, and every commitment matters. Life begins to feel easier when we stop resisting this truth and start using it. Each time we choose clarity over confusion, courage over fear, action over hesitation, we reclaim control over our experience and over our destiny. The weight of unnecessary struggle falls away because we are no longer victims of circumstance. We are active participants in our journey. Choice is the bridge between where you are and where you want to go. It allows you to simplify complexity by deciding what truly matters, to cut through noise by prioritizing what is essential, and to create momentum by consistently aligning actions with intention. When we embrace the power of choice, we realize that life is not complicated. It only seems so when we fail to act consciously and intentionally. Every choice is a step toward freedom, toward clarity, and toward a life that feels natural, effortless, and deeply rewarding. Simplicity is one of the most overlooked keys to a life of freedom, fulfillment, and clarity. We spend so much of our energy chasing complexity, more plans, more rules, more strategies, thinking that the harder we work, the more successful or happy we'll become. But the truth is, complexity often creates chains that hold us back, while simplicity frees us to move with purpose, confidence, and ease. When we simplify, we remove the unnecessary noise and distraction that cloud our judgment and drain our energy. We stop trying to control every detail and instead focus on the essentials that truly matter. This is not laziness or avoidance. It is precision. It is the understanding that when we align with what is fundamental, we unlock momentum that complexity can never provide. The paradox of life is that the more we simplify, the more powerful we become. By letting go of what is irrelevant, we gain the mental space to focus on what drives results, nurtures relationships, and builds character. Freedom comes when we stop overcomplicating our routines, our decisions, and our expectations of ourselves and others. Life is naturally abundant, naturally flowing, and naturally supportive. But we often block that natural ease with unnecessary drama, worry, and attachment to outcomes. Simplicity also allows for clarity of vision. When you remove the clutter, the path forward becomes obvious. You begin to see opportunities that were hidden behind distraction, solutions that were obscured by complication, and joy that was lost amidst overthinking. Every decision becomes lighter. Every step feels surer, and every day carries a sense of ease and flow. Those who embrace simplicity understand that true freedom is not about having more. It is about needing less, expecting less, and controlling less. It is about recognizing that peace, progress, and fulfillment come from focusing on the essential and letting go of everything else. When life is simplified, resistance fades, stress diminishes, and energy is redirected toward growth, connection, and purpose. The beautiful thing about simplicity is that it is available to anyone, at any moment, in any situation. It does not require wealth, status, or permission. It requires awareness, intention, and courage to strip away the unnecessary and embrace what truly matters. When we do this consistently, life stops feeling like a series of burdens and starts feeling like a canvas of opportunities. Every choice, every action, and every thought becomes aligned with the flow of life, allowing us to experience freedom not as a distant dream, but as a natural state of being, accessible the moment we decide to let go of complication and embrace simplicity.